Good evening. My name is Michaela. Thank you for joining our live Tele-Town Hall for FL20. We host these events to give the 20th Congressional District Office the chance to speak directly with you wherever you are to reach you and to answer as many questions as possible. This evening, we'll focus on the basic constitutional rights every person in the United States has, regardless of their immigration status. The goal of this Tele-Town Hall is to ensure everyone in our community is equipped to engage with immigration and customs enforcement and know their basic rights. As I mentioned before, this is an interactive forum, and we would love to hear from you. We will be collecting as many questions as we can during this event. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and a member of our staff will take down your name and question. If you are streaming the event on our website, you can simply type your name and question below the streaming player. We receive a lot of questions on our live events, so if we are not able to address your question, please send us an email at fl20sconnect@mail.house.gov. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press *3 on your keypad or type them below the streaming player. Now, I'd like to introduce our host for the evening, your Congresswoman, Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick, and I want to thank you for joining me tonight for this important Tele-Town Hall on immigration rights. I know that many of you are feeling uncertain because of the recent changes in immigration policy. This isn't just a political issue for us, it's deeply personal. I want you to know that I see you and I will continue fighting for you. We are a nation of laws, but also a nation of compassion. I want to assure you that my colleagues and I are in Congress are actively working to push back against harmful policies and to expand the protections for those who need it the most. Already, we've successfully protected birthright citizenship, ensuring every child born in the United States is a citizen of the United States. The courts have paused action against it, which is a huge win for us. It is important to understand that birthright citizenship is secured in our Constitution. We are also actively working to create a pathway to citizenship for those who entered the country legally. Many individuals are facing challenges because their paperwork has lapsed, and we hope to find a solution that can help them. But there's more work to be done. Right now, we are advocating to extend temporary protective status, which is TPS, but the specifics are still uncertain. Our primary focus is to establish a clear pathway to citizenship, especially for those under humanitarian parole and TPS. We need real immigration reform that is fair and humane. We need to make sure your rights are protected. The United States Constitution guarantees basic due process rights for everyone, including undocumented immigrants. That is a fundamental principle we all must remember. Tonight, I'll be joined by our special guest from our community, State Senator Rosalind Osgood, Commissioner Hazelle Rogers, Frandley Julien, and civil rights attorney Paul Chavez. They will share important information about recent immigration policies affecting our community and provide valuable resources to help you keep safe. I encourage you to reach out to my office with your concerns. I'm here to serve you, and I will never stop fighting for you. I want you to hear from all of our panelists, and I want to hear from you, your families, and what the needs are as this continues to move forward. Thank you so much for being here. And just know that every single day we're in DC fighting for you to make sure that everyone is protected and is respected. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our next guest.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you for your commitment to keeping the district informed. Next, I'd like to introduce our presenters for the evening. We will be joined by 4 guests: Florida State Senator Rosalind Osgood, Broward County Commissioner Hazelle Rogers, Civil Rights Attorney Paul Chavez, and Frandley Julien Esquire. Our first guest, State Senator Rosalind Osgood, has been the Chief Executive Officer at Mount Olive Development Corporation for the past 23 years. She is also the Florida Senator for District 32, Florida Senate Democratic Caucus Whip, Florida Black Caucus State Legislators Chaplain, and Associate Minister at New Mount Olive Baptist Church of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Senator Osgood, on.
Good evening to my esteemed Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick, and all of you that are out there listening to our County Commissioner Hazelle Rogers and all of our other historic civil rights leaders that have joined us tonight. I am Dr. Rosalind Osgood, the State Senator for Florida Senate District 32. And I'm sure you have been watching in the news what's been going on in Tallahassee. We were called into a special legislative session by the governor who leads the executive branch, legislative session 2A. Well, we have a phenomenal leadership in our Senate President, Senator Ben Albritton, and the Speaker of the House, Danny Perez, who took the power back for the legislators and decided that we were not going to allow the executive branch to dictate what we do policy-wise anymore. So we gavelled out of special session 2A into our own special session 2B. And during special session 2B, there was one bill introduced with some significant changes to the state of immigration policy in the state of Florida. That bill included repeal of in-state tuition for undocumented students. The bill revoked the 2014 law that allowed undocumented students to qualify for in-state tuition rates at public post-secondary institutions. The bill proposed that as of July 1st, 2025, only U.S. citizens or lawfully present individuals may be eligible for out-of-state fee waivers, and institutions are required to reassess current recipients' eligibility by that date. The bill also had a component to enhance cooperation with federal immigration enforcement at all levels of Florida government, from contracts and everything that we're doing in the state government. This bill also allocated $500 million to support these efforts, with $375 million designated for statewide federal collaboration and $25 million for bonuses to support officers. The bill had a component that got even more egregious, in my opinion, because it stricken the penalties for crimes by undocumented immigrants. This legislation imposed harsher penalties for crimes committed by undocumented individuals, including the possibility of capital punishment for severe offenses. This bill was very, very hard for me to even listen at. It sparked a lot of debate, and I can tell you that there were many of us in Tallahassee that outright voted no and pushed back. I am personally not an immigrant the way that we're defining it in America now. As a Black American, Black people were human trafficked here to do the work of people that never paid us for it. And we must understand as a community what impacts one of us impacts all of us. If you're not in the minority elite white group right now, you are a target. This immigration is a very, very serious matter because we know that it was our brothers and sisters in Haiti that started to first revolt against slavery, and then the Maroons in Jamaica, and I could go on and on. Of course, this is Black History Month, but I talk about Black history 365 days of the year. So as we fought back on this horrible legislation, I mean, just think about it. In the state of Florida, you have a legislator that have taken this elite position to use their power to make, break, and even take someone's lives. Well, I personally feel that's too much power for any of us imperfect human beings to have without the leading of an almighty God. So that legislation passed. I was a no vote, but it has not become law. Hear me. It has not become law. It has gone to the governor's office for him to make law or to veto it. And we don't know what he's going to do. There's talk about us being called into another special session, but we will continue to fight for human decency for all people. We cannot allow any body of government to discriminate against any group because of their status. We are human beings, whether we are legal or illegal. And I want to encourage those of you that work in education not to overreact. In school systems, you have FERPA laws. You have many different laws that protect information and that protect students and teachers. So no group should be able to come into a school and just have open access to a student or to a teacher. I'm glad that I'm in Broward County and we have a very progressive superintendent in the person of Dr. Howard Helpburn who understands this issue. So what I encourage us to do is to not allow places that we work to overreact and take our rights. I am working along with our Congresswoman and a group of immigration attorneys in Broward County that have set up a hotline, 1-888-600-5762, for any immigrant to call and know their rights. And in closing, I want to caution my immigrant brothers and sisters because we've been seeing a lot of tricks being played in Florida. So in Delray last week, brothers and sisters were called to come check in with their immigration officer. And when they went in, they were detained. So if you get a call to go check in with your immigration officer, please check in with that 1-800 number. Call the Congresswoman's office. Call some of your local officials before you just show up somewhere when it's an attempt to entrap you, to take you hostage and put you in a system of inhumane mass detention and mass deportation. And we must continue to support our law enforcement agencies who are saying we don't have the manpower. We're already short on officers to just keep safety in our communities. We don't have the manpower to aggressively support the federal government in such inhumane act where they're just trying to mass deportate immigrants under the disguise of they're deporting criminals. We continue to hear this rhetoric about immigrants and these rapists and murderers. Well, if we had immigrants that were truly rapists and murderers, they would already be incarcerated in our jails. We wouldn't have to go into people's homes and jobs and churches to violate their rights and mistreat them. Brothers and sisters, we cannot back down. We must use our diverse imperfections to create a unity and a movement at this time to let the government know that we're never going to surrender, we're never going to give up, we're going to keep fighting and demanding our rights as long as we got breath in our body. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your leadership and allowing me to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to hearing from the other panelists.
Thank you, Senator Osgood. Our second guest, Broward County Commissioner Hazelle P. Rogers, was elected to the commission in 2022 after serving as state representative for District 94 and 95, and as mayor of Lauderdale Lakes. Commissioner Rogers, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First, let me thank Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick for gathering us here this evening. Attorney Julien and Chavez, we can only imagine the number of calls to your offices in the past 3 weeks. I want you to know, everyone on this line, that you are not alone. While we are fighting, we need for you to just protect yourself. Do not think you are alone in any way. We want you to know, as the Congresswoman stated, or Senator stated, we are pushing back. We are fighting. You have protection under this Constitution of this great country. I am an immigrant. I was born in Jamaica. I came to this country in 1969. Everything I know, I was taught here. Okay, I too believe that the U.S. Constitution protects us, but I need for you to do something for yourselves. What I'm going to ask you to do, okay, as things get crazy in our lives, just remember to pray. And yes, pray with action. I want you to make sure you're talking to an immigration attorney that you know, and watch for folks that tells you that you can get away with this and they can do this for you. This is not the time for that conversation. Okay? You need to reduce your stress. So you need to be informed. Make sure you know your status and the status of your family in case someone asks you for proof. Parents, this is a good time to teach your children their telephone numbers and any other number that is important to them. Let them know if you're taking a trip, who will be responsible for them. Okay, yes, auntie and uncle cannot be the only thing they know about their family. Now is the time to teach them the names of auntie and uncle. Okay? Talk to them about good behavior, not to draw unnecessary attention to oneself. Take pictures of important documents and have them notarized and given to two trusted persons. We have to prepare. While we are praying, we have to prepare. Thanks for joining this informational session. Stay calm, listen to the news, stay informed. If you must speak to an attorney, make sure they have your interest at heart. I remember being in the legislature, and in 2014, we instituted in-state tuition rates for our immigrant population. We made sure that kids that are coming into this country did not have to wait for 5 years to access kid care. Okay, those things are there in law and will provide you those protections. It cannot just go away that easily. So I'm asking you, parents, friends, and family, take care of each other. We don't know everything, but we are going to challenge everything that will impact you. We're going to be your voices. We're going to be in places like this forum so that we too can hear what is happening in our district, in our homes, in our communities, and to let you know. You have a friend in Washington, you have friends in Tallahassee, and you have friends at the local level, your cities, and at the county. We are here for you, and we will make sure that the Constitution and the laws that are embedded in this country, that we continue to follow the law. I thank you, Congresswoman, once again, and colleague, Dr. Rosalind Osgood. I must apologize to State Rep Lisa. We had our conversation. She's on another call. If not, she would be listening in like all of us will do so she can work with our senator. I thank you all. Be blessed.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Our third guest, civil rights attorney Paul R. Chavez, has 20 years of experience under his belt. Mr. Chavez recently joined Americans for Immigrant Justice as the director of AI Justice's litigation and advocacy program. Previously, Mr. Chavez was a senior supervising attorney with the Southern Poverty Law Center, where he directed the organization's immigrant justice work in Florida. Mr. Chavez, on to you.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much for having me on. I'm always happy and maybe even a little excited to talk about our rights. So I can go over a quick kind of know your rights type presentation, what they are, talk a little bit about the Rapid Response Network, and then perhaps a little bit about family protection. As was said earlier, we all have rights, and we all have these constitutional rights irrespective of immigration status. The two big ones that I'd flag are the Fifth Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. Under the Fifth Amendment, you have the right not to incriminate yourself, which means you have the right to remain silent. Everybody sees that on TV. You have the right to remain silent. Anything said can will be held against you. Well, that came from case law stating that you have to tell people that they have this right. And it's an actual affirmative right that I would encourage everybody to actually exercise. Now, you don't have to say, I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. You can simply just remain silent, don't answer questions. Or if that's uncomfortable, say, I don't answer questions. Most of us are conditioned to answer questions because it's just being polite when somebody's talking to you. But if you're confronted with law enforcement or ICE, they're trying to figure out more information. They're investigating. So no good can come from you talking about your status, talking about your day, anything else. If they're going to arrest you, they're going to arrest you. have those conversations with you and your lawyer or with your lawyer present. If you're ever confronted, just say, I don't answer questions is the easiest. Like was mentioned, I've been an attorney for 20 years, and that's what I would do. I would never try to talk my way out of something or explain the law or get into it. I would just simply repeat, I don't answer questions. The next constitutional right I'll mention is the Fourth Amendment right. And so that's the right to be secure in your home, papers, and effects, which means that you can't be searched or your home can't be searched unless you give consent or unless there is a warrant. And then there's a few other exceptions that aren't likely to apply, like exigent circumstances. And that's one of it, like somebody's being chased and they're chased into a house. Law enforcement can go in. But generally, it's only with consent or with a warrant. When ICE shows up to a house, more often than not, they'll look to get consent because it's rare for them to actually have a valid warrant. And I'll talk about that a little bit. So if ICE comes to your house, ask to see the warrant. If they don't have it, don't consent. And so if they're at your house or somebody wants to search you, just say, I don't consent to searches. That's the way to assert that Fourth Amendment right. I don't consent to searches. And you should probably say it that way. Sometimes, say, an ICE officer or law enforcement may say, hey, you don't mind if I take a peek inside, do you? And if you say yes, as in, yes, I do mind, then they may perceive that as saying, yes, come on in. Or if you say no, you say, oh, great, well, then you don't mind. So I think just be clear in your assertion that you don't consent to searches. Now, they may do it anyway. Don't try to stop anybody. Don't try to physically stop anybody or argue. I mean, if law enforcement or ICE has the right to do it, they're going to do it anyway. So you might as well just assert that you don't consent to searches and then see what happens later. Oftentimes, the legal fight happens after the effect. If you show up to your attorney, your immigration attorney, or any other attorney, and then that's what they get. They have a lot more to work with. That you asserted your rights. You said you don't consent to searches. So a lot of any of the evidence could be pushed out of court, all to your benefit. So that's the Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. The Fifth Amendment, I don't answer questions. Fourth Amendment, I don't consent to searches. So if an ICE officer shows up at your home, my recommendation is to not open the door. Tell us the same thing. I do not consent to searches. If they say they have a warrant, ask them to slip the warrant under the door or show it through the window. If they show it through the window or under the door, take a close look at it, make sure that it actually describes the place to be searched, and pay attention to what's being searched. If the warrant says that they're searching for a person, well, that means that they can't start rifling through your drawers because a person isn't going to fit in a drawer. Make sure it's dated and make sure it's actually signed by a judge or a magistrate. Oftentimes, ICE has what's called notice to appear, which is basically an administrative warrant, but that warrant does not give them authority to enter into a home. So if ICE shows up at your house and holds up a warrant and it's just ICE notice to appear, that doesn't give them authority. I would still say I don't consent. That's not a valid warrant. If they have a valid warrant, they're going to come in, one way or another. My recommendation is just don't fight, don't endanger yourself. There's no reason to be put yourself physically at harm. These are people with guns and oftentimes a willingness to use them. Some more tips. Don't provide information about your immigration status. That goes back to don't answer questions. Oftentimes, whether you're already in jail, if you're on the street, if you're at work, that's a fishing expedition. Don't talk about it. Don't lie to folks. So it's better just to remain silent. Don't give false documents or carry false documents. That can result in trouble. Don't sign or any document that you don't understand. You can always ask to speak to a lawyer. In criminal cases, everybody has a right to a lawyer, and if you can't afford one, you can get a lawyer appointed to you. That's not the same in immigration court, but you do have a right to an attorney. You just don't have the right to a paid attorney. But if you're ever being questioned, you can always ask, I'd like to speak to my attorney. So those are generally 3 of the 4 things I would recommend saying when confronted by ICE. 1, I don't answer questions. 2, I don't consent to searches. 3, I'd like to speak to my attorney. And then 4, am I free to go? So if you're confronted, ask, am I free to go? If they say no, well, then that means you're probably being detained. And if you're being detained, just assert your right to remain silent. I don't answer questions. In order to detain you, they have to have reasonable suspicion of some sort of crime. So don't give them that reasonable suspicion. They'll eventually let you go. If they say no to your question, am I being detained? Well, they turn around and slowly walk away. Oftentimes we see in court, judges say, oh, well, it was just a consensual conversation. The person didn't need to be there. You could have walked away at any time. Although most of us know that it certainly doesn't feel like that when somebody's standing over you with a badge and a gun. It doesn't feel like you have the opportunity to walk away. But oftentimes you do if they don't have reasonable suspicion of a crime, a much less probable cause to arrest you. So ask, am I free to go? If the answer is yes, walk away. If the answer is no, start to assert your rights. All right, as a basic know your rights, I'll mention the 800 number that was mentioned. That actually connects to the RAISE hotline, and that's the Florida Rapid Response Alliance for Immigrant Security and Empowerment. There's a web app at raise.is that has that number, a big button on the front. You could push it and call it through that number. And then it also has links to a lot of resources, a lot of the resources, including the basic Know Your Rights that I talked about, a link to download a Know Your Rights card, which basically is the information that I shared, a link to a family preparedness plan, which I think Senator Osgood had some good notes about, creating that emergency contact list, collecting those important documents, making sure your family knows what to do in that awful scenario that somebody ends up being detained, et cetera. And additional downloads available, like your rights at a hospital, your rights at a school, various resources that I think will be helpful to folks. And through that hotline, they can alert folks to upcoming Know Your Rights presentations, family protection clinics, and even legal clinics. I will leave it at that. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of this information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chavez. Lastly, Mr. Frandley Julien will be joining us. Mr. Julien, an Esquire, is a former Miami-Dade County prosecutor. He is also an essayist whose writings on Haitian politics are regularly published by local newspapers such as the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel. Mr. Julien, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I want to thank and congratulate the Congresswoman, Dr. Osgood, Commissioner Rogers, and Attorney Chavez for this very important conversation with the community. Attorney Chavez pretty much covered what we refer to as rights, and what I want to do briefly is cover what types of documents you can carry with you to shield you from enforcement, depending on your status. At the office, we have been receiving a lot of calls from people asking us, depending on their status, what type of documents they should carry. It bears mentioning that the current administration is using expedited removal in an aggressive manner. Under their guidelines, everyone who's been in the United States for less than 2 years may be subjected to expedited removal. And it's important, one thing I usually tell people, it's important to, if you've been here for more than 2 years, it's good to carry documents proving that. It may be, it's ridiculous, but it may be copies of tax returns. It may be your driver license showing that it was issued more than 2 years, but whatever can prove that you've been in the country for more than 2 years, I encourage people to carry with them. Some countries have been designated for temporary protected status, and under INA 244D4, if someone has TPS, temporary protected status, you cannot be deported, you cannot be removed from this country. So if you currently have TPS, it would be wise to carry your approval notice with you. If you are renewing TPS, you haven't gotten the new approval yet, I encourage people to carry a copy of a past approval notice and a copy of the receipt notice of the latest application. If you are in removal proceedings, you are under Section 240 of the INA. Therefore, you should not be subjected to expedited removal. So people who are in removal proceedings, I encourage them to carry with them the notice to appear, your hearing notice, uh, any order from the judge, like an order of administrative closure. This proves that you are in removal proceedings and should not be subjected to expedited removal. People who have pending asylum application, I encourage them to carry evidence of that. People who have a pending adjustment of status application, who have not before they filed, who did not accumulate unlawful presence, it makes sense for them as well to do that. One thing we need to understand is that when expedited removal is resorted to in such an aggressive manner, it always results in erroneous removal. So it's important that you try to protect yourself by following what the previous speakers have said and what I just mentioned here. It's really important to try to minimize the risks each time you are venturing outside, or even when you're at home. Lastly, I will mention that we have started getting calls from lawful permanent residents who, upon returning to the United States, are facing more stringent questioning at the port of entry. And I think we need to, perhaps at another discussion, we will address this topic, what lawful permanent residents should be doing at this point, because we're facing a new situation, aggressive enforcement of immigration law. Thank you.
Presenters, thank you very much for sharing. I now would like to take a few questions from the audience. Presenters, if you have a response to any of the following questions, feel free to unmute and respond. Our first question is from John Lajo. This question states, I'm a volunteer at state prisons and inmates are asking me if they are going to be sent back to their country of origin. Will this apply to both state and federal prisons? Once again, I'll repeat the question. I am a volunteer at state prisons and inmates are asking me if they are going to be sent back to their country of origin. Will this apply to both state and federal prisons?
I could take a general stab at that. Although I would encourage folks with various immigration statuses to consult with an attorney, because all of their individual circumstances are going to be different. The way it generally works for folks that are locked up in either state or federal prison, not much has changed. Generally, somebody does their time. If they're convicted of a crime and sentenced, they'll go do their time. And then if they are pinged on ICE radar, ICE will issue a detainer request to that jail or to that prison, either state or federal, asking them to hold on to the person so the ICE can go pick them up, and then they're transferred to a detention center, and then they go through the removal process. More often than not, if you've been in, you'll probably go through a removal process, which might mean you'll have an opportunity to make your case to stay in the country. But that's the same now as it was 3 weeks ago. People that are locked up can be exposed to the deportation pipeline through those internal databases.
Thank you for providing that answer. Our next question is from Carletta Morris. This question states, will there be a change to the process to obtain a citizenship? They also have a friend that went to the embassy to retrieve their citizenship and only got one question wrong and had to start over. I'll repeat the question. Will there be a change to the process to obtain a citizenship? This individual had a friend that went to the embassy to retrieve their citizenship and only got one question wrong and had to start over.
I can address this one. The This administration wants to make it more difficult for people to become citizens. So we expect that it may be more difficult indeed to become citizens, and one of the easiest ways to achieve this goal is through the test and through the English language, civics and English language proficiency. So we wouldn't be shocked to see in the coming months that those tests are made more challenging in order to make it more difficult for people to become citizens. Now, for the citizenship, if someone went to get their citizenship, I'm pretty sure it is at the USCIS. Very likely it's at the USCIS office if there's a test involved. And the way it works, depending on the age, the number of years the person has been a citizen, the general standard test is 10 questions. If you have 7 rights, you're good. Once you reach 7 good, once you provide 7 good answers, they stop the test, you pass. So I don't know what happened in this particular instance.
Thank you for providing that answer. Our next question is from an anonymous individual. Their inquiry states, for those who cross into the country at the border, they were given documents saying they could retrieve their I-94 online, but when they attempted to do so, they could not. What should they do? Once again, I'll repeat the question. For those who cross into the country at the border, they were given documents saying they could retrieve their I-94 online, but when they attempted to do so, they could not. What should they do?
This one, I'll take a shot at it as well. We have cases like this. One thing I would tell people is to try, if you have an hyphenated name, try move the names around. Sometimes for some people, under the document number, normally you need to enter the passport number, but for some people, it's the alien number that you enter to retrieve the I-94. In other cases, when the person, but this is mostly with people coming on a visa, when the person has had several passports, you try, all the passport numbers. Now, until the advent of this administration, what we would do in a case like this, we would reach out to CBP and let them know, ask for help. They have an office of deferred inspection that could help with a situation like this. But under this administration, personally, I try to limit as much as possible interaction between my clients and CBP. So if I were to have someone in the situation like this, I would try to get it as, different ways to get the I-94, but I would tend to refrain from reaching out to CBP out of fear that they would ask my client to come in personally. At this point, I don't know what would happen. So I try to limit interactions as much as possible since the advent of this administration.
Thank you for providing that answer. Our next question will be from Ismail. Their question states, I have a stepdaughter who lost her paperwork. She had her green card. It is lost. How can I make sure she won't get picked up and shipped back where she comes from? I have a stepdaughter who lost her paperwork. She had her green card. It is lost. How can I make sure she won't get picked up and shipped back where she comes from?
I
Several
could
things.
take a stab.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I might hand it over to you. I with the paperwork lost, that doesn't mean that there's a change of status. I would recommend following up with an attorney to try to get a hold of what's called an A file. And everybody who's gone through some immigration process has an A file that they can request. Sometimes you actually have to do a document request through the government to get it, but you can get that green card reissued. If she is detained without it, you would probably need to get an attorney and then be able to hunt down that green card, and that may stop her from being actually removed. To find an attorney Julien is on the line. I imagine he'll give his number. Another great resource is through AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and they actually have a link online to find AILA qualified lawyers. So that's AILA lawyer.com. And AILA screens their lawyers, so they're all qualified, and you can generally trust that you'll land with at least a qualified attorney. And as far as nonprofits go, the 800 number mentioned earlier could line people up with pro bono help or organizations that provide pro bono for low-income communities.
Thank you all for providing all of your insight and responses to these questions. Now, we've received a high volume of questions for the evening, and we will unfortunately have to move over to our poll questions. I will read each poll question twice and allow time in between for participants to answer. Question number 1 states, do the new immigration policies make you feel safe? Please press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Once again, do the new immigration policies make you feel safe? Please press 1 for yes or 2 for no. It looks like we have a result. Our results state 14% feel safe with the new immigration policies, and 88% do not feel safe with the new immigration policies. Thank you for providing a response. I'll now move over to question number 2. Did you consider this town hall helpful? Please select 1 for yes or 2 for no. Once again, did you consider this town hall helpful? Please press 1 for yes and 2 for no. We now have our results. 96% of you did consider this town hall helpful, and 4% did not consider this town hall helpful. Thank you for responding to that question. Our final polling question states, if you would like to join our e-newsletter, please press 1 on your keypad. Once again, if you would like to join our e-newsletter, please press 1 on your keypad. Thank you all for participating in our poll, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick is committed to keeping you empowered and informed. It is an honor to continue providing these much-needed resources to our district. Please visit our website at www.cherfilus-mccormick.house.gov/live to watch the replay of tonight's town hall or to get more information on rights immigrants have in the United States. We are coming to the end of our live event this evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this important access to live town hall event with Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick. We appreciate the opportunity to speak directly with you and answer all of your questions. If we were not able to get to your question this evening, you can leave a voicemail after the event or send us an email at fl20sconnect@mail.house.gov. We will host more of these events in the future to keep you informed on what we are working on and other important updates. Once again, thank you for your patience at the initial commencement of this town hall as we allowed a few more constituents to join on. Have an amazing evening.